So let's talk about productivity and specifically with the lens of productivity for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs, we're an interesting breed because especially in the early days of the business, we had to wear every single hat that existed for the business. And we had to learn how to do everything ourselves, manage everything ourselves. And so typical productivity, tips or mindsets don't necessarily apply when it is you in every seat. And even as you start to grow and get employees and start to delegate things, you're still ultimately responsible at the end of the day for the quality of your product or service. So, understanding how to manage your time is probably the number one tool in how you can have a business and not drive yourself crazy. Um, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but activities will expand to fit whatever container you give it. And so it's super, super important to set boundaries and guidelines around your tasks and around what you're doing in a day, because otherwise it will consume your entire life. Everybody has worked the 14-hour days, worked weekends, worked evenings, afternoons. And so by being more intentional with your time and what you're doing with your time, you can increase your sanity, which everybody likes. It's never a bad thing, right? Quick intro for me. If you're not familiar, Angela Arnold, I own Arnold Marketing Consultants. We're a digital advertising agency for health and wellness businesses, and we also work with some other industries as well. And I struggled with productivity my entire life. I was the person in school who always turned in their assignments late. I was the person who failed tests because I didn't study on time. I didn't know how to manage my time. I didn't know how to plan ahead. My life was a mess. I wasn't meeting any goals. I actually didn't really have any goals for a long time, and I knew something had to change. And so that's when I really started buckling down and saying, okay, other people have figured this out. What can I learn from them? And so I went on a few years. I researched really deeply into productivity and time management because I knew other people had figured this out. But it's not just a function of learning what works for other people, it's a function of learning what works for you. And so the things even I talk about today may not work for you. One tip might work great for you, another might not work for you at all. So it's just a function of understanding that if you try a new technique for managing your time or a new tool for productivity and it doesn't work, you're not the failure. It might not just be a good fit for you. So what I did was I took all those truly years that I spent learning about productivity and condensed it into kind of a cheat sheet guidebook. I didn't mean to write a book. I truly just started writing out, here are the things that worked for me because I had so many people asking me, how are you so productive? How do you get all these things done? How do you manage to, still work out and eat well and spend time with friends when you're doing all these things? And so I started to write down these tips and then it turned into a book. So T will put a link in the chat to the book if you want to get it. I wrote it back in, I think, 2018, 2019. So it might be a little outdated now. Some of the tools may not even exist anymore, but I think a lot of the general mindsets still apply. So you can check that out. But first, let's talk about your mental game. I used to roll my eyes when I would hear, coaches or guru type people say that the mindset is the most important. And it is true, though. If you don't have your mind in the right place, all the other stuff is just a band-aid on top of it. So really focusing on your mindset and your mentality will help you then truly incorporate, some little tip or tool or technique. All right, so there's a TV show called Modern Family, and they had a funny recurring joke in it where in their house there was a step that was broken. And through the seasons, through the years of this show, every time somebody would go down the step, they would go, Oh yeah, I got to fix the step. Oh yeah, I got to fix the step. Oh yeah, this step is broken. We should probably fix that someday. And I say this, I think it's a amazing analogy for if you think about everything you do and think about in a day, there are probably multiple broken steps that bother you in your mind over and over and over again that you want to get to someday, but you haven't gotten to yet. And so it will just build up over time and really drag on your mental awareness, your efficiency, your energy throughout the day. So just take a moment, think about, what are some steps that might be nagging you or bugging you. Feel free to put those in the chat. It could be something as simple as there's an Amazon return you got to make, and it's been sitting in the front hallway for 45 days and you still haven't returned it to Amazon. That could be something. It could be something of, maybe you meant to update a piece of collateral for your business, and you keep sending it out and keep having to caveat to people, well, I mean, I meant to update this. It's not quite updated, but here you go. These steps just add up and really add to wear and tear on your mind. Because these are such small moments in time where you go, oh man, I meant to fix that step. It's easy to not understand how much time that's really stealing from you. So think about it. If you're even just once per day thinking about that broken step, that breaks your flow of what you've been thinking about. It takes you from thinking about high level things down to this, detail, this small task that you still haven't gotten done. It breaks you out of thinking more strategically and creatively and puts you in this place of annoyance, guilt, anger, whatever it is. And that adds up over time. People in productivity get very focused on just the time cost of something, but there's also an emotional cost to something as well. Getting annoyed multiple times per day or multiple times per week of small stuff that you just need to fix but haven't gotten around to, that really takes a toll on you emotionally, and on your energy levels. And again, as entrepreneurs, we have unlimited things to do. Our to-do list will never end. So by not fixing it, it just creates all this drag. So a little bit of an example of fixing the step. I took this kind of literally. So let's say you watch a few YouTube videos for how do I fix a step? That takes you maybe 30 minutes. You go to Home Depot for supplies, it takes you 45 minutes. I'm assuming you don't have to go back to Home Depot for something you forgot, which we all know is how that works. And then maybe it takes 15 minutes to actually fix the step. Well, that's a total of an hour and a half to actually take care of it versus just being annoyed by it for 5 minutes a day for a month is 2 hours and 30 minutes. And there are things y'all probably have that you've been annoyed by that have been lingering for more than 1 month, right? This stuff just really adds up. A tip that I have, especially for recurring tasks that I don't like doing, is to time it. So I used to really dread unloading the dishwasher. I timed it. It took me 3 minutes and 45 seconds to unload the dishwasher. I used to really hate blow drying my hair. I timed it. It took 5 minutes to blow dry my hair. And so, these things tend to build up in your mind and you think like, oh, this is going to take so long to do, whatever. And then by the time you actually tackle it, you're like, well, that didn't actually take much time at all. I know everyone here has had a task like that you sat and dreaded and procrastinated and delayed on for probably months. And then by the time you did it, you were like, well, that wasn't as painful as I thought. It just happens. We're human. So I like to time things just so I know, okay, it's not really as long as I think. Another piece of mindset and mentality is sleep and movement. Everybody knows these things are important, but I really want to emphasize it because, like I said or at the intro to this mindset section, if you don't have good sleep, if you don't have, kind of a reserve of energy, and you try to add on these Band-Aid solutions or these hacks on top of it, you're just really putting a Band-Aid over a bullet hole. We all know what it feels like to try to operate on not enough sleep. Then you end up drinking too much caffeine, which makes it hard to go back to sleep. So then you take a sleeping pill, which makes you groggy in the morning, and then you have to drink more caffeine the next day, and it just becomes this never-ending cycle. Again, I'm not saying it's easy. Addressing sleep takes a long time. It took me probably 3 years to get to where I now sleep, about 8.5 hours consistently every night. But I really had to focus on it, and I still don't have great sleep. But I'm working on it. And then movement, same thing. Energy begets energy. The more that you make time for exercise, and movement can be something as simple as a 20-minute walk. That still counts. You don't have to do some like intense HIIT workout that's 2 hours long, or lift all the weights. Our bodies are designed to move and to have movement throughout our lymphatic system. And so by prioritizing this, it really does help you become more energized and give you more energies. And something that is very true is that, what I referenced earlier with the sleeping pills or the caffeine, these are all coping mechanisms to cover up foundations that may need fixing. So if you find yourself, relying on energy drinks all the time, or, I need a glass of wine or two in the evening to calm down, that's you regulating your nervous system with external assistance. How can you do it more internally? I know this seems silly to talk about in a productivity presentation, but this stuff is very, very important to do and focus on. Another piece that is a nice perk of being an entrepreneur is we can set our own schedule within reason. Of course, there's things like meetings we need to be on, or we need to be available during working hours. But for the most part, we do have the luxury of deciding when and where we can work. And because of that, we can work with our own biorhythm. So some people are morning people, some people are evening people, some people are 2 a.m. people, and that's when they're most productive. So, think through, when can you get into that flow state where you can think really deeply or focus on creative problems, where that kind of work just comes naturally versus, making yourself do it or trying to force yourself to do it. On the flip side too, think about, when are you most easily distracted? When is it that you find yourself unable to focus? And so I recommend changing your schedule to fit those times. So for me, I'm absolutely a morning person. That's when I do my best thinking. I can do strategic work then. And so I don't have any meetings before 11 a.m. It's just simply not an option when I'm scheduling with people. Of course, there's some rare exceptions because sometimes you have to, but for the most part, I have all my meetings in the afternoon because I really want to protect that time in the morning for when I get this work done. So I encourage you guys, think about when you're most productive. How can you start to block off that time and guard that time from interruptions, from meetings, from, people popping in or errands? And how can you shift your tasks to best fit those times of when you're best focused or not? All right, let's talk a little bit about time management. So time blocking, my favorite technique in the world. Time blocking is simply blocking out your time for certain things. Very obvious, right? The reality is that it's extremely inefficient to multitask. I will get into, the true cost of that later on, but we are just big primates. We're literally animals. We have not advanced as much as we think we have with all of our technology and things that we've created. Our brains still do best when we focus on one thing at a time. We are not meant to hop over here and do one thing, hop over here and do one thing. Some of you are probably listening to me talk while you're doing other work. now you're doing two things at 50% capacity instead of one thing at 100% capacity. Checking email all day is a huge time suck. It will shock you if you have like a little timer on your phone and hit start every time you check your email and then stop whenever you hop out of your email, and you do that for a few days, the amount of time you spend on email will be incredible. And, a lot of our jobs, sometimes it is email. That's where we get work done. But again, it's very important to put blocks around that time and to be intentional about it. Another piece I want to emphasize is that you own your inputs, meaning you're the business owner, you're the entrepreneur, or even if you are an employee somewhere, you still have control over what comes into your attention, what comes into your mind, and what you let happen. And so thinking about managing your time is also setting boundaries for other people or other things to say, no, I'm not going to let this disrupt my attention and disrupt my work. Your attention and mindfulness and how you get work done is the most important thing. Everything else chips away at it and eats away at it. So maybe shift your perspective into, I own this. I can have control over when people can ask me questions or when people can talk to me or call me, whatever it is. I've been watching the show Mad Men recently, and to see how they do work without computers, without cell phones, without things constantly interrupting them, it is just much more calm and focused work that they do. They can only do one thing at a time because you either have a typewriter or a piece of paper in front of you, and that's about it. And for entrepreneurs, for time blocking, I like to set time to work on the business versus in the business. Otherwise, it just never gets done, or you try to shove it in, like you have 15 minutes between meetings, so that's when you're going to look at your P&L. Okay, but you may not be in the mindset of, I need to think about our finances right now. You may be in the mindset of, I just had this client meeting and we need to do X, Y, and Z, and the other client meetings coming up, and I need to talk to them about these things. And so can you block out even an hour a week to say, this is when I'm putting my CEO hat on, or this is when I'm putting my CFO hat on, or the marketing hat on, and give yourself that space and permission to pay attention to your business instead of constantly shoving it to the last thing in your to-do list, because that's what tends to happen. My favorite tip here is a power hour. So actually T and I developed this together because I was finding that throughout the day, I would get constant messages, questions, things to review, comments I needed to respond to, and it would just eat up my whole day. Same with email, right? It just eats up your entire day. So what I do is I have 30 minutes or an hour on the calendar marked as a power hour. And so any little task that I know will take me maybe 2 minutes to do all the way up to 15 minutes, I just put it in the power hour. I literally just edit the Google Calendar time block and put a bullet list of things that I will get to in the power hour. So that way, when things come up, even in email that I know I need to respond to or take some action on, I just throw it in the power hour. I can keep doing my deep work. And then when it's time to deal with those little things, I can just knock them all out at the same time. We adopted this how long ago, T? Probably 3 years ago at this point, and
Yeah, I would say so.
it's been game changing for us. So highly recommend. Another tool I really like using is reclaim.ai. T will put a link in the chat to this as well. It's kind of a smart scheduler for your to-do list. So here I actually took a screenshot of my horrific looking calendar. I understand it looks crazy, but you put in, here are the tasks I need to work on. Here's how long it will take me to do. And then you can order priority when you need to get them done, which ones are really critical priority for you to do, which ones are lower priority. And it will intelligently schedule those tasks around when you have meetings. So for this, you can see I didn't have a meeting on Monday that started till 11:30. So I had some tasks that Reclaim put into my calendar before that meeting started. So highly recommend this tool. It is very nice for really long tasks. You know, let's say there's a client strategy that I know will take me 8 to 15 hours to do. I can tell Reclaim, hey, this is going to take me 15 hours. I want to work on it in at least 45-minute chunks. And then it will schedule that, you know, intelligently throughout my week. So I make sure I'm working on it without it kind of falling off my to-do list. Because, you know, we just hop from next thing to next thing and next thing, and it's easy to forget. Or not give yourself enough time for those really big, beefy deliverables that take a long time. Those are always hard to schedule. Another little pro tip here is that in Google Calendar, you can add a second time zone. This is not related to productivity at all, but I find it really useful. So you can see I have Central Time, which is where I am, and then I have Pacific Time because I can't do math and subtract 2 hours from the time. So that's just a pro tip for Google Calendar. You can always add those things on. Another piece related to time batching is to collect things in one spot. So just like the power hour, right? Any task that takes between 2 and 15 minutes, I throw it into the power hour. For us, because we're a marketing agency, there's constantly things I need to review. A client, you know, strategy, copy for Facebook ads, a new website design that I need to give input on. And I found myself, you know, all day the team was saying, hey, Angela, can you take a look? Hey, Angela, can you take a look? We just created a Slack channel called Angela Review Time. And so whenever there's something that needs my review, it goes into that channel. And that way, again, I can batch when I look at all those things. I don't even check that channel, to be honest. T checks it for me. She puts those things in my power hour. So I'm not getting those inputs all day of, oh, I'll need to review these meta ads, or, oh, I'll need to look at this SEO article. Another thing that we do is adopted from the EOS system. It's called Level 10 meetings. We have a weekly team meeting where that's where we discuss things about how we work and about the business. Because it's so easy, again, throughout the week as these things come up, to say, hey, I think we need to redo our reporting template. Okay, well, if somebody raises their hand and says that on a random Tuesday morning, who's responsible for taking that on? What if you guys need to discuss? How do you work on that together as a team? That's what the level 10 meeting is for. We have a Google Sheet where we have, here are the items we want to discuss as a team. And then throughout the week, we just pop in there and add things that we want to discuss as a team. It's all captured in one spot, and we talk about it once a week for an hour and a half. That way it doesn't, again, blob over our entire week of trying to work on things with the business. And I've also found it's accelerated the team's input into what we do and how we do it, because they feel empowered to say, hey, I have an idea, or I have a suggestion for how we can improve something. They know where to put that feedback, and they know that we will get to it every single week. So they feel more empowered. It's worked out really well. And again, feel free to leave any questions or comments in the chat. Only nice comments, though. That's the only thing you can leave. But I'm keeping an eye on it, and T is as well. Another piece is hiring out and delegating things. This is a skill in and of itself. I have to say, probably the #1 question I get asked is, how do you use an EA, an executive assistant? I have had somebody in that role for the last 12 years of my life. T has been with me for 3 years. We just celebrated her 3-year anniversary with us. She's not allowed to leave ever. She's staying with me the rest of her life, but understanding how to hire and delegate things is a superpower, but it's also a skill you can get better at. If you've tried it in the past and it's failed or hasn't worked, or somebody dropped the ball, that's okay. You're not going to be perfect at everything the first time you try it, this is something you can improve on and get better at. Something I want y'all to think on is the time and energy cost of everything you do. Again, that step that you need to fix costs you time and energy. Not just the things you do cost time and energy, but the things you think about cost you time and energy. If you're constantly trying to remember, okay, I really need to schedule that dentist appointment, and oh, I haven't set the plane tickets yet for that trip, and then I have to remember to order this. All of that constantly running through your head, or even sitting on your to-do list, pinging you in the face, really has a true cost to your business and to your productivity. So if you can think about what can you outsource for even a quarter of your own hourly rate, especially when you own your own business, you can figure out how much money you are worth per hour. If I work an hour, I can generate X dollar in either billings, adding value to a client, deepening a relationship with a client. Those things are very valuable. Do you really need to spend your time on things like scheduling, on things like emails, payroll, doctor's appointments, travel, all these things that eat up a lot of time? It doesn't mean you have to outsource everything. Like T and I, we divide and conquer some of these things. I personally love planning travel. I find it very relaxing. So I know a lot of people say, get an assistant and they'll plan all your travel. I still keep that because I think it's fun. I like seeing all the pieces fit together and doing it. But there's things that I don't want to do and don't like doing, and that's where she jumps in and helps me out. So again, there's no one right way to do all this stuff. It's just what is right for you. One thing I do want to note is that assistant does not mean cheap. It's so easy to say, well, I could get a VA in the Philippines for $3 an hour. Everybody's tried it. You may have tried this before and it didn't work. I'm not saying the Philippines doesn't have great talent. Our project manager, Rose, who's been with us 5 years, she's in the Philippines. But it does not mean cheap. Like any team member, the less you pay them, the lower quality the work, generally speaking. Of course, I'm speaking in very broad strokes here. So when you think about an assistant, this is a true pivotal, important role on your team. You should treat them as such. You should pay them as such. A great book for if you are hesitant about how do I get an assistant, how do I start outsourcing things, is Your World-Class Assistant by Michael Hyatt. It's a great kind of how-to for how do you find, train, work with an assistant for people who maybe have never done it before or have never done it successfulully. In that book, he does recommend Belay Solutions. That's actually where I found T and where we started working together before I stole her away. And they're not cheap. They have packages of hours, but it's absolutely worth it. And then also T has some availability for, other fractional assistant work. So if y'all are interested in working with truly the best assistant of all time, I think she has like 1 or 2 slots available. So y'all can email her and see if you guys are a good fit to work together. But I cannot state enough the value of having someone who can take those little tasks off your plate, help manage your calendar. It's not just about scheduling, it's about understanding how you work, how you think, what will make you more productive. T is the one who makes sure things don't get on my calendar before 11 a.m. She's the one who makes sure that I don't overstuff my schedule, because if left to my own devices, I would have 8 meetings a day and get completely burnt out. I'm an introvert. I can't talk to people that much. It's not good for me. She's the one who manages that. So again, an assistant needs to be a very high level partner in your life and with what you're doing. It's a very, very important role. Another piece that I highly recommend is hiring an automation or an operations consultant. So an example here is, so we use a project management tool called ClickUp. And in that tool, every 2 weeks, our entire team says, what is our next 2 weeks going to look like? Let's plan out every task we need to do, how long that task is going to take us, so that way we can do capacity planning. If we have a project that's going to take 120 hours, but we only have 80 hours of employee time, how are we going to manage that? How do we fit the pieces together? And so our project manager, in doing that capacity planning, she was going to everybody's calendar and seeing, okay, how many hours of meetings do they have on their calendar? Because for every hour of meetings, that means less time that they're available to work on tasks, get things done. And so she was manually going in to pull the meetings, add it to the capacity planning every 2 weeks. Well, that took her 4 hours a week at $35 an hour. I said, this is silly for you to do manually. We can absolutely do this with an automation. And so I worked with Chris, and he made a connection between Google Calendar and our project management tool ClickUp, to where now we press one button, it automatically imports everybody's meetings into the tool. They're properly sorted, properly tagged, have the time estimate in there. It's just done. So we saved $560 a month, and it took Chris, I think, 3 or 4 hours to make this happen. And we have no recurring cost. We have no, subscription that we have to pay. It just works. It's just incredible. So there are absolutely things in y'all's business where you can just do one little piece of connecting two tools to each other, or by having somebody like Thejas come in and say, I'll take a look at your operations and tell you how you can save even 10 hours a week is a massive time savings. Just by having somebody who knows how to do that, look at it yourself. It's just very difficult to look at it when you're in the business. You take for granted, okay, we just have to do it this way, or I just pull these reports manually. Everything can be automated. The computers are magic. There's possibility to automate everything. All right. And another piece that we developed to save us a lot of time and energy is team factor authentication. So I'm sure y'all have run into this, especially if you run an agency or you have an account that multiple people on your team need to share. So you probably run into this, right? Where you're trying to log into something and it needs a code sent to your phone, or it needs a code sent to your email, or maybe you have an authentication app, it has like the 6-digit number that expires within 30 seconds. And if you've played this game with your team, it gets very frustrating very quickly. So especially for us, again, because we're a marketing agency, we've got to log into people's Instagram. We need to log into clients, MailChimp accounts. We're constantly needing codes, and it was all going to me. So what I would get a Slack message, Angela, I need the code for this. So I would have to stop what I was doing, get the code because it expires in 3 minutes. Or if I didn't see the message, because let's say I was in a meeting or I was working on something, by the time I get the code, I go to tell the employee, hey, here's the code. Well, they're in a meeting or they're working on something else. And so they don't get back to me till by the time I'm doing something. And then you've wasted the whole day just trying to log in. So again, thanks to Chris, we developed Team Factor. It's this little automation. I just want to show you guys, here's how it works. So for example, I go into Bonsai, which is our project management tool. I mean, not project management, sorry, it's our invoicing and proposal tool. So I need the code, I requested it, and then it will go into our Slack account and then just populate the code into our Slack. So that way anybody on the team can go and get the code themselves. They don't need to bother me, or they don't need to bother T to get the code. It just like spits it out directly into Slack. I cannot tell you how many hours of time this has saved us, this one little automation. It's unreal. And so that's kind of my promo thing today is, if y'all want to be a beta user, we are taking beta users for Team Factor. Again, it can pull the authentication, app codes, and it can do things from email and then also from text messages if you're using Google Voice. So if you're curious and giving it a try, just email me, Angela at Arnold Marketing. It's the best thing we've ever implemented. I love it. Every time I see it go off at like 11 p.m. when one of my team members is working and I don't have to do anything. I just giggle. Best thing ever. All right, so if let's go back to time management here. I want to do a little exercise. So if y'all have something to like write down or take some notes on, I want us to think through just the past day and a half of work that we've been doing, the tasks that we've just been working on since Monday morning, and try to categorize these into 4 different sections or categories. I'm borrowing this from Dan Sullivan. He has the coaching program Strategic Coach. He's also written, I think, 1 billion books is the number of books he's written. But he's very much about how do you as the entrepreneur be your best self. You started your business because you have a unique ability, a special skill that nobody else can do. How can you spend more of your time in areas that is your unique ability and less time on things that are frustrating to you or slow or, eat away at your attention and energy? And so think through what is in your unique ability, meaning what do you have superior skill at? What gives you energy to work on, where the clock just disappears and you could work on it for hours and hours and hours. What gives you this passion and excitement for doing it? What came factory installed with you when you were born? Even when you were a kid, you kind of did these things. Another category is excellent. So there's things that we are excellent at, meaning we have a superior skill. We may have a reputation for it, but we don't really have passion for it. For me personally, it's creating social media calendars for clients. I've done it 1 million times. I'm very good at it. I just have no passion for it at all. I've done it too many times. It's not something that I love doing. I have other people on the team who love it. They get energized by it. They think it's so fun to put together the puzzle pieces of what they need to post about that month. What are you competent at? Meaning you could do it, but it kind of gives you some anxiety. You don't love doing it. And then what are you incompetent at? What do you actively avoid? What really causes you stress? Where do you procrastinate so long that it turns into a mess you have to clean up later? We've all been there, completely understandable, but take a little time to kind of put some of the tasks and things you've been working on or maybe avoiding this week into these 4 different categories and think through where these might fit for you. And I would love to hear some examples if y'all want to put in the chat as well. Whoops, hold on, let me go backwards here. So again, think through what really gives you energy. What are you superior at? What are just maybe some of your excellent activities where you can do it, you're not really passionate about it? What are you competent at? And then what are you incompetent at? And then maybe later today or tomorrow, you can also go through and give percentages for what % of your time do you spend doing these activities. When I first started this exercise, I think I was maybe 60% in incompetent or competent activities. You're never going to get to 100 unique ability. That would be incredible, but that's just not realistic, especially for entrepreneurs. But you can start to see, okay, these are activities I really need to get off my plate. Something that blew my mind, a huge mindset shift for me, was for this incompetent activities. There are things I'm incompetent at that I hate doing, that I actively avoid doing, that are some people's unique ability or some people's excellent. Some people love doing the things that I hate. I can't stand putting together proposals. I get all wound up and like I want to tell a story and I want to cover everything we talked about. How do I make a compelling case that we can solve their problem? I'll delay on doing proposals. I don't want to do it. I'll drag my feet through the mud. There are other people who love that. So what can you do and get off your plate that somebody else may love doing? Not everybody is like us. Everyone has different skills, obviously. But what can you start to shift around between you and your team to better utilize the things that give you energy and that you're amazing at? Anyone want to volunteer one or two activities that you did or didn't do this week and where it might fall into? Safe place, we can all share here. All right, Russ says an incompetent activity is admin, HR, and contracts. Yep, I can absolutely see that. But again, there are people who love the admin work. There are people who love HR. There are people who love doing contracts. That's why they became a lawyer, why they, became an assistant. Let's see, pivot and pilot. I know that's Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. She says, hate taxes and anything to deal with that. Absolutely, 100%. I have a CPA that I very happily pay every year to manage dealing with the taxes. I don't have to think about it. He just says, here's how much you owe. Here's how much you owe me for doing it for you. And I happily write that check every single time. Russ also says taxes. Yep, 100%. Also, Rebecca says she is great at delegating. That's an excellent activity for you to focus on. If you are a good traffic control person and knowing we have this big project, how do we delegate the different pieces out to it? There are other people who hate doing that. So lean into that, Rebecca, as much as you can in your business. Sarah Siegel says she moved her new business contacts to a new system. Otherwise, it was admin 100%. Yes, just getting one new tool can take some of these incompetent or competent activities off of your plate. Cody is excellent at escalation management and putting out client fires. That is a great skill to have. Cody, I'll just call you next time I have a client fire and let you handle that one. 2 says social media. Yep. Lisa says contracts, proposals, and bookkeeping. I think those are pretty common for us entrepreneurs, unless we have an accounting business, in which case that's what we like doing. And Lisa says dislike monthly reporting, but I'm mostly relieved of that. See, Lisa delegated out monthly reporting to someone on our team who probably loves getting the numbers, putting together the story of here's what we did this month, here's what we learned, here's what we're improving on. These things are really important. Martin says awful at tasks like expenses and accounting. Yep, completely get that as well. Having a bookkeeper was one of the first hires that I made because not something I'm good at or will stay up to date with. So y'all took a moment to write out some of these tasks. Now take another moment and just write down what is one way I can improve. What is one task or area that I could improve on? Here's how. Here's the benefit I'll receive from improving on it. And what is the action you'll take and by when? So for example, let's say Martin's pain point of expenses. Maybe the improvement idea is to try out expense software. There's all kinds of software out there that promises to help you with your expenses. They all probably use AI at this point, or at least they claim to use AI at this point. So maybe he could say, my idea is to use or to try out a new expense management tool. The benefit is that you will get your expenses turned in on time, or you'll start tracking your expenses more consistently. A specific action could be, ask 3 people how they manage their expenses or what tool they like to use. And maybe you can do that by the end of next week. So that's an example. But with all these exercises, what's very powerful, I took this away from Strategic Coach, is you can do a log of here's the things that I'm spending my time on that I'm maybe not great at, but what's the actual action you're going to take? This pattern is also mirrored in the level 10 meetings, where we'll bring something to the team to discuss, but we always have to solve for it. It's not just one thing to say, we really need to change our monthly reports. They take forever to pull, they're convoluted. Okay, but then what? What is the actual solution? What's the next step into doing it? So by always defining what is the next action to take, you are much more likely to actually take that action. Another thing that tends to stop people from taking action when it comes to time management and productivity is that you may want to know every step that you need to take in order to finish it or master it or delegate it or whatever it is. You don't. You just need to know the next step. Because by the time you take the next step, you're already moved forward. And then from there, you'll be able to see more clearly what's the next step beyond that. Then once you move forward, that one step, you can go, okay, now what's the next step here? This was a big unlocking for me because I tended to want a full and complete plan of what is this going to look like? What are all the possible tasks and steps I need to do before I can get started? I would end up never getting started. An example I can give right now is with our company, we really want to nail down our pricing. It's been a pain point forever. We've tried different pricing methods. Some of them have worked, some of them have not. Nothing's consistent with how we price. And so I told the team, I said, all right, this first half of the year, I want us to get very intentional about pricing and how we do pricing. I set up a space in our project management tool for us to track this project. I set up weekly meetings, but we did not plan out every possible step and every possible task to figuring out pricing because we didn't know what those steps were. But we did know the first step, which was go talk to other agency owners and see how they price. Read some books on this because people have written books on this. Those were just the first two steps that then illuminated the rest of the path for us. So if we had waited to know the entire project before getting started, we never would have gotten started on this. All right, and next I want to go through, I think this is our last section here. Thank y'all for sticking with me so far. I hope this is all making sense and is helpful, is to guard your castle. So I spoke about this a little bit before, but what's between your temples is the most important asset in your business. Your mind, your attention, the power of your thought, the creativity with how you handle problems is the most valuable thing in your business. And so by letting things intrude into it, you are then giving power to those other things. I used to look at Twitter. I loved looking at the news. You know, I considered it staying informed. You know, I needed to know what was going on at all times. Until I realized one day I was scrolling Twitter and my Fitbit at the time said, "Good job exercising." I was not exercising. I was sitting at a desk and reading Twitter, but my heart rate was so elevated because I was so agitated and angry from reading this that my body physiologically thought I was exercising. Probably with none of the benefits of exercise, but all of the stress and cortisol increases of it. And so you have to pay attention to not just your time, but also your mental energy and even your emotions throughout the day. What are you letting in that will take you off of your game? This statistic of it takes an average of 23 minutes, 15 seconds to get back on track after you get distracted by an unrelated task. We could quibble over the time and how they measured that all day, but it is true. Knocking yourself out of focus, out of a flow state, whether you're thinking about something, working on something, or planning something out, having one notification come in, you hop over to answer it and then hop back to your task. It takes your brain time to then get back into that task. We all know this, but I promise you this is really true. So what I do is I simply turn off email push notifications on my phone. There is no reason I need to get work emails on my phone at 8 p.m. when I'm having dinner with my fiance. Nothing is that important. There is no emergency in marketing. Nobody's going to die. So I just simply don't need it on my phone. When I'm doing focused work, I completely exit out of Slack. There is no option for Slack to start pinging me in the upper right-hand corner of my screen while I'm trying to get work done. Again, there's no emergency. Nobody's going to die. If they need an answer on something, I'll get to it when I get to it, in an hour or so. They can wait. It can wait. It doesn't really disrupt things that much, except for the 2-factor codes. That's why we made Team Factor, because I was tired of getting interrupted with that. Another one is setting your phone and do not disturb during the workday, or just not having it on your desk at all. I found myself, when I had my phone on my desk, I would pick it up just to check it. Then I would open an app, start scrolling, and then 2 minutes later go, what am I doing? So I just took the phone off my desk. I leave it plugged in the other room. It's not even an option for me to look at my phone during the day. So start setting these boundaries of your time and your attention. Another piece to understand is that time will expand, or the task will expand to fit the container that you give it. So that's the other benefit of time blocking, is if you say, all right, I have an hour with this presentation, I wanted to update it for today's talk. I gave myself 1 hour to update this. If I hadn't set boundaries over it, if I just said, okay, well, it's on Tuesday, let's say it was last Wednesday, I would have been like, I have a week to do it. I'll get to it sometime. Would have worked on a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and then it would have been Monday night and I would have had to stay up late and finish the presentation. But by giving myself 1 hour, I know I have to get it done in that hour. Raise your hand if this is you. I know a lot of you have your cameras off, but you can raise your hand if this is you. I'm too busy to plan. I promise you, if you're in that state of overwhelm, of there's too many things going on, I'm so stressed out, I'm not going to make these deadlines, the team's messing up on this, or I need to delegate this to them, or this project's not moving along fast enough, exit out of your email, exit out of Slack, put your phone on do not disturb, spend 10 minutes writing out, here are the things that are stressing me out. What are the actions I can do in order to decrease that stress by a little bit? You may not solve the problem completely, but what is that next step to solve the to help solve that stressor? And then just write those in order. That's all. Just spend 10 minutes writing these out. What are the actions I can take in order to decrease my stress? That will elevate your mood and decrease your stress way more than just saying, I don't have time to plan, I'm just going to power through, answer everything I can, do all the little things because it feels more productive. Shut out the world for a minute and just take a second to prioritize things. It will help you immensely. All right, one last piece here before we wrap up and get to any questions that y'all might have, or if there's a situation, you know, that you struggle with your own productivity, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll kind of brainstorm on what is that next step you can do to fix it. This Eisenhower matrix is a classic for a reason. As you're writing out these stressors and what you need to do, think about what is important and urgent, important but not urgent, not important or urgent, or not important and not urgent, and use that to help filter out what you need to take action on and what you need to do. It is so easy for us as entrepreneurs to neglect the important but not urgent things. These are things like looking at your P&L, looking at your accounting statements, dealing with your taxes, dealing with contracts, dealing with HR things. But those have to happen in order for your business to run smoothly. So can you set that time on your calendar in advance, block out time for it in advance so that you have a reminder and a set time to do it? Super, super important. So I hope I've given you guys some tools, some motivation in order to go fix the step. We all have the steps, but removing those little things from your brain will give you that much more space, energy, you know, mental freedom to solve the really big problems that's why people pay you to do. They pay you to have your unique ability and solve problems. So that is all for today. Thanks y'all for attending and for, you know, participating in the chat. This is very fun for me. I could talk about this literally all day. Please do put any questions in the chat. You can always email me too if you say, I think I want, you know, help with this specific thing, or, you know, maybe if it's a tool. And if you want this recording or a copy of the presentation, feel free to email me. I'll send you a copy. And then I think we're going to put this recording up on YouTube as well, so it will be accessible to everybody. But thanks, y'all. This was very fun. Always a pleasure to talk about productivity, like truly one of my favorite things ever. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was fun to see y'all here. Some familiar faces. Always nice. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. Have a good rest of your week. And we will see you in the next one.